We're beginning Beis Halacha Yud. Shochad Ishto Ibnoi Videi Agdolim. If he slaughtered for his wife and for his older children, who are not minors anymore, and for his slaves who are Ivriim, and they did it for themselves as well. Let's go down and look at the Peirush, and that's the greatest dissension to what he's doing. The Rambam says there's no greater protest than this, and they therefore can only use their own, and he has to eat the rest of the meat that he prepared for them. He can't leave over from the Korban Pesach. I guess the Mishnah cites the source, the Gemara Psochim 88. Hey, Tana Rabbanan, Selamoyes. Selamayas, that teaches us that a person comes and slaughters for his children who are minors and for his slaves, whether they know with their knowledge or without their knowledge. But he cannot slaughter for his older children or for his slaves who are required, they're Jewish and they're required to keep the mitzvahs, or for his wife, only if they agree. And all of them, in any of these situations, if they slaughtered for themselves and he slaughtered for them as well, then they all follow the rule of their master, except for the wife, that she can use her own because she can protest. She wants her own. More questions: why is a woman different? Why is it different than his adult children or his Hebrew slaves? Why shouldn't they be fulfilling their own obligations? So the Gemara says, "Isha v'chol do'im." When it says the wife, it doesn't mean only the wife. It means that the adult children, as well as the slaves who are of their own obligations, they can, if they slaughter, they eat from their own. More questions further. In the end of it, it says that all of them fulfill their obligation with their master's Korban Pesach, except for the woman who can make a Machon, who can make a protest. So it's only because they protested. But if they didn't say anything, they have to use their husbands. Now, beginning of the Bryce, it says you need to have their agreement. What would mean if they didn't say anything, they don't have the agreement. The Gemara says that it means the agreement, not when they said yes, but as long as they didn't say no, therefore they have acquiesced. So the Gemara questions. It says in the Bryce, so the Gemara says, when it says you do it according to it means when they didn't say no. They not when they said yes, but they didn't say no. The Gemara questions. It says kulam sheshochtu v'shochet aleim rabim yotzim b'shel rabim. It says, it would seem though, at the beginning it says whatever, if he slaughtered for them and they slaughtered for themselves, they used their masters. And it would seem they didn't protest, except for the wife, because she can protest. That even Mistam, it does not, without her approval. But they would seem, there's a differentiation between they and her with regard to the protest. The Gemara says, since it's slaughtered and they didn't say anything, or vice versa, since the wife slaughters and she does an action, that's the greatest protest. And therefore, you don't need to make a protest, because what they did for themselves is the greatest protest. But they don't agree to it. They have like Tanim, that their Machor doesn't help. Even if they sought it for themselves, it's postal, and they're Yoitzin B'Shel Rabbim. But his children that are adults, and his slaves that are Ivriim, they're like his wife, that can protest, and their actual slaughtering of the Korban Pesach would be their protest. Now, Mary Cooker's point explains minors, since he has to teach them mitzvahs, he can do it against their will, and therefore they're included in him. This is a lesson, I guess, to teach you that even if they want to do something, they want to go down elsewhere, child. So you can tell them, no, I have to, the mitzvah of chinuch is on me. But adult children, he's not obligated to teach them, they are obligated to learn themselves as well. Therefore, only if they don't say anything, then they are included. But if they protest or they slaughter their own animal, their own korban pesach, then they are not included with him. Mary Korkus adds, even though in many places we find Ktanim includes children that are adults, that rely, in other words, their father supports them. It doesn't have to do with age, but by korban pesach it seems it does have to do with maturity. Even if he's on his father's table, his father cannot do so, because a person can protest, so writes Tosfos. But if he's a minor, even though he's not supported by his father, Marie Korka says, it doesn't say in Tosfos whether he has a law like a Gordon law or a Kalton, he says he's supporting himself. And therefore it would seem Kalton means somebody who's less than 13 years old, and Gadol means anybody who's above 13. And whether he is supported by his father or not has nothing to do with Pesach. Otherwise, the Chacham would be required to be explained, and so the Meiser Rekeach writes as well. In the Sefer Malgi B'Kodesh, he questions. It says, if they kept quiet and they didn't say no, that's considered they agreed. What would be the ruling if they didn't hear that he pointed them? Is then the fact that they kept quiet as if they agreed, or only when they heard and they kept quiet? So Malki B'Kodesh says in Loshen Rambam, it says this is as if they had knowledge. You do need their knowledge, and only if they heard and kept quiet, that's considered that they agreed. But if they didn't keep quiet, it's not considered midaiton. Therefore, if he does so every year, since they didn't say no, even if they didn't hear, they should assume that he's going to do it, because they know that he says slaughters for them. But if he doesn't do it for them every year, therefore, even though they didn't say no, it would not be automatically theirs. He couldn't put them on his korban, the children of Gedolim, and therefore they wouldn't have brought a korban pesach. As like somebody takes a korban pesach for his friend without any specific instruction. Chazon Yecheskel questions, why does the Rambam change the Loshen HaBraisa? All of them, if he slaughtered and their master slaughtered for them, they fulfill their obligation to their master. That it seems that Rambam in the Braisa it says that they slaughtered first. And the Rambam says even if the master slaughtered first, they cannot use their own. But if they slaughtered first, then they would be able to use their own. That's the language of the Rambam, seems to infer that. Chazon Yecheskel answers, since the Gemara concludes that on the wife, Amorova, that Rebbe says the action of the wife, once she slaughters, that's the greatest process. It would seem to be saying that even if she slaughtered after her husband did it, then it's a protest. Because if it's talking about that she slaughtered before her husband, then why does she have to protest? She already has a korban pesach. It must be because the action later after her husband is considered a protest. Therefore, the beginning of the Braisa, by Ktanim and Avodim, is talking about when he slaughtered first, and then they slaughtered. And the Posuk Selabayis gives them the option to do it without their permission, and therefore when he slaughtered for them, they have a korban pesach and they can't protest any longer. But if the minor slaughtered if a korban that was sanctified for them before their father did the korban pesach, since they already took themselves out from the portion of the house, then they would be able to use their own korban. But Eviknani Even if he did it for himself, it's nothing, because his very essence, his very physical being, belongs to his master. It's not because of chinuch. Marcheshes points out that if they only bought the korban, they didn't shecht it, it's not considered like a protest, because the Gemara v'kulan sheshochtu seems to be saying that only shchita is a protest, and he goes on to explain this at length.